try to make me feel embarrassed. Their attempts have been in vain, but they tell me I'm the one with problems. They're the ones who are insane. So for those who want but won't admit it, you shouldn't feel like that, cause you could be 20% cooler and 10 seconds slower. Shout it out. I'm proud to be a Brony. Yeah, yeah. I'm proud to be a Brony.
Hello mayors and gentlecolts, my fellow bronies. Welcome to I'm Brony and I'm Proud. I've got the Friendly Elephant with me. Friendly Elephant has over 900 watches on DeviantArt. G'day, Friendly!
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I know it's already been a few months since, but welcome back from your travels in Africa. My gosh, that must have been a blast, and we're going to talk about that later.
It was a great time. I can't wait to talk about it.
So, how did you become a brony?
I remember the exact date that I discovered it. I was just randomly browsing around on YouTube, looking at Skrillex tribute videos or something. And then it was like these videos where it uses various clips of different sources, play along with the random sounds that, dubstep has. And I was watching one, and then I saw like this one random clip that had Fluttershy in it. That struck my interest, and I was like, what is that? That looks interesting. And so then found some sources and discovered MOP. I've always been a sucker for adorable things, cute things, stuff like that. So watched the first episode, then the second, and then the third and fourth, and then the whole first season. And I got into it. And that was back in March 11th of 2012. So it was just before the second season ended.
Fantastic. And for me, it was April 2012, so we're pretty much at the same time. How weird is that?
That's quite coincidental, right? Around the same time.
2012, it was a good year. Well, for me, it was a dark one, but that's another story. And you can catch that story at episode 1 of I'm Brony and I'm Proud. Back in the day, at the very beginning, in good old season 1.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
That's when my interest in it started in 2012, but I didn't actually start drawing anything until August of 2013. Learned about the show and the fandom throughout the next year and a half until I actually got into it.
That's perfect, because that leads into the next question. How did you become a creative?
I've been in art classes for pretty much all of my grade school years and through college, and the pony stuff. That started off after I was watching the Everfree Network when it was still putting out videos, and I was watching one video from BronyCon on how to draw ponies. I thought, since that looked really easy as it did with just, the circles for the body and the head and the lines connecting up, I thought it looked easy enough for me to try out. And I haven't really drawn anything previous to that time in over 2 years. So I decided to give it a go. And so maybe an hour later, I drew my very first pony picture, and it came out better than I expected. And since then, I've improved with the style, and here I am today, providing pictures every week.
Awesome. You spoke of college and an interest in art previous to the fandom. Talk a bit more about that.
I went to a community college, and I did an art class there, but it didn't really turn out the way you would expect it to be. I did pass the class, but it's what ruined the fun of making art for me, because the teacher basically was, every time we seemed to have done something right, she would say, oh, that looks good, but it's drawn too small. I want you to draw the whole thing over again, even though I spent an hour and a half trying to draw this geometric landscape with perspective. And just we had to buy materials that we didn't need, and the whole class didn't enjoy it, and it just ruined the whole thing for me personally. And so I didn't draw anything for the next 2 years. But right after I discovered MOP was when I got the inspiration to draw again. And from what I said before, that's how it all started.
Wow. Apologies, I didn't want to open up old wounds. It's not what this show's about. But sometimes teachers can mean well, but sometimes they can get in the way of the people that they're supposed to teach. Maybe it's really not about teaching, as like you said, it's about inspiration, inspiring students to come into their own. Got to let them do so, otherwise, well, they won't.
It's not a problem at all. If I never discovered MOP, to this day probably wouldn't have been drawing as much as I do now.
If we can even flesh it out even further, before college, before then, did you even have an interest in art and creating art then, or was it something that sort of started from that point forward?
In the grade school years, I thought the art classes were a lot of fun. Teachers were fun. In high school, taught me many different tips on how to do perspective and how the color blue is a primary color and if you put that in the background of any drawing that you drew, it'll make it pop out of the paper more. Just things like that I thought were really fascinating. Also, how to shade round objects and give more depth to things. That's how I learned from that as well.
Fantastic. So it looks like you got a lot of good help there, but sometimes not in other places. You've retained so much from that time. I guess we can credit the teachers there. It sounds like they did a good job.
I'll definitely thank my high school teacher for that, because he helped me out a lot.
Well, you hear that, high school teacher? Shout out to you from the Friendly Elephant. And leading into, what are your influences and inspirations? And I guess, one of them you've mentioned is probably your teachers from high school.
I think it mostly is the animal kingdom that inspires most of my art, as well as my trip to Africa that I recently went on, and just African environments, African animals. It's just, in my personal view, it's really beautiful and very diverse over there with all the different species that can coexist together. And that's why through my gallery you could see all sorts of antelope characters, including my elephant, and it's all so beautiful to me.
And it's my understanding that this was your first trip to Africa as well. What was that like, this first impression, this first engagement with this, well, it's not an alien environment, but it could be.
I was completely blown away right when I got there. Everything I've ever dreamed of. There was golden grass as far as the eye can see, mountainous landscapes, there's animals everywhere, and babies of every species you could think of. It was just so awe-inspiring and beautiful. I almost cried when I first got out the plane. It was beautiful, to put it simply.
A lot of this is covered by your YouTube channel, Pachyderm Pictures. It's hard to pick your favorite experiences in such an environment. I guess the question is, which experiences stuck out the most? And what stories you feel like have come from those experiences that you're sort of retelling in the time that's passed? I can imagine it's still pretty fresh.
I had many really cool encounters during the 15 days I was there, 2 weeks. On the first day, I got to interact with baby elephants at an orphanage, and that was awesome. I got to pet them, and they're surprisingly fuzzy. And on the other day, I went to the Old Pajita Conservancy, where the last 3 northern white rhinoceroses are. So I got to literally stand next to the last male and pet him. He was humongous, and it was just really amazing to be near such a critically endangered animal.
When you say humongous, talk about scale. How many friendly elephants would make up a white rhino?
If you're talking about my actual self, he was over 2,000 pounds, which is like a ton. Top of his shoulder almost came up to top of my head. So he was huge. He was about maybe 8 to 9 feet long from nose to tail. Massive animal. Not as big as an elephant because he's a rhino, but he was still huge, really huge.
Wow, that's huge. What's the next experience or story that comes to mind?
There were really, really close elephant encounters when we were on the rover going on the safaris. The elephants, especially the juveniles, they would come within feet of us and just stare at us and smell us with their trunks. And it always looked like they were trying to figure out what we are or what are we doing here, but they never attacked us or charged at us in any way. They were just curious of us. It really shows how intelligent they are and how inquisitive they are to things passing by that are human-made. Like the rovers, probably very used to seeing them nowadays because there's constantly safaris happening over there.
It's quite interesting how you see animals adapt. And also the fact, well, here they come again. It's like, everyone pose. But no, it's not like that. I've heard that is the case for some places where some of the animals are trained actually to do that. But probably it doesn't take much for an intelligent animal to realize, oh, here's my good side kind of thing. Did you encounter a bit of that on your travels?
No, actually. All the animals were very cooperative or just very relaxed around us, around the rover. And none of us seemed to get threatened by them at all. And they were very docile. I think it's because of the region that we were in, since we were in East Africa, in Kenya. There's not that much poaching going on in East Africa, or in South Africa, where the elephants and rhinos are more on high alert, and so they're more likely to actually charge humans and their vehicles in fear of them potentially being poachers.
Amazing stuff. Care to share a few more experiences?
We also went to a Maasai village. We met the Kenyan natives, and it was also a really interesting experience with that because they would greet us with a song. The woman of the tribe would be singing a greeting to me and the group I was with. while we were entering their village, and the people would show us how they hunt for food and how they get honey from bees in the trees by using like smoking pieces of sticks. And they would use like a pulley system to lift that burning bushel of sticks to basically smoke the bees out to get the honey. I thought that was really interesting how they do it. But the funniest thing was how they hunt orcs. They basically take a very friendly donkey and they train it to be friendly around the antelopes themselves. But not just with the donkey itself. They would put a mask that has the color of the orc's face on it with sticks coming out of it that look like horns. And so the Maasai warrior would be hiding behind this donkey as it approaches the herd of orcs. Once it gets really close to the antelopes, who are unsuspecting because they think the donkey is another orcs, he will jump out from behind them, basically use his bow and arrow to get the orcs. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen, but it seemed to really work.
Necessity is the mother of invention, that's for sure. And you saw this happen as it happened?
They didn't really hunt any orcs. They just showed us the donkey with the orcs mask on. Everybody laughed when they brought it out. I never knew they did that. It was a revelation for all of us.
Far out. And speaking of revelations, did you have a few more?
On the 11th day, we went to the real Pride Rock. It actually exists in Africa. We went to the lodge and the place where the Disney animators actually got inspiration to create the backgrounds, environments, and the rock itself, what they used to basically make Pride Rock in the actual movie, The Lion King itself. It was amazing because we got to literally stand on top of the rock as if we were Simba. The child in me was beginning with excitement after that because ever since I was a little kid, ever since watching the movie, I would want to just go to the top of Pride Rock, stand and look at all the beautiful environments from up there, and I actually got to do that. And I wasn't even expecting it. It was literally the best moment of my life right there. Everybody was just crying tears of joy.
The way you're talking about it, I did not know that Pride Rock is a real place, and sounds like something I need to check out for myself. It's interesting that you mentioned Disney. When I saw your work for the first time, I was amazed on how slightly Disney-esque your style of work is. Is it something that you see as well? Or feel free to counteract that completely.
Disney, actually, Lion King especially, it's actually one of my first influences in being interested in animals in Africa, things like that. From a very early age on, it inspired me about getting into the whole animal thing and reflects that in my art. Disney has some good styles in their animations. I sort of wanted to combine with my African animals characters a combination of realism, MLP style, and with Disney as well.
Outstanding. Disney, if you're listening, this may be a man you want on your team. So, throughout your travels, were you traveling within the same group?
Yes, actually. I was in a group of 12. We pretty much stayed together for the whole duration of the trip, and I got to become good friends with a lot of people. Even the guides that were showing us around in the rovers, we made really good friends with them as well. The people that we would pass by in the more developed towns, they would wave at us as if they were really happy to see us. I asked the guides why, and they said because we're their livelihood. It's the tourism that helps them financially, since Africa still pretty much has third world countries, and we really help them out as much as we help out the endangered species.
On that notion of group, of acceptance and belonging, and you probably not just saw that within your own group, but of course all the tribes and towns that you visited throughout those couple of weeks, how people greet you, how you're treated as such in that part of the world. So what are your thoughts on the Brony community?
It's actually a really cool community because everybody is so creative and there's a lot of helpful people in this community. I haven't really seen anything else like it. I've never really been in any other community before. This is actually the first one like it that I'm taking part in.
So as you mentioned, you made friends on your travels, even in a limited amount of time. Have you had that happen to you in the fandom as well?
Over time, I've made many good friends during my time in the fandom, mostly on DeviantArt. I've made a lot of good friends and shared arts with one another, and they really enjoy my art. It has pretty much developed over time, and now we have our own little group that we hang out all the time.
Oh, that's cool. What about connectedness? Do you also feel that with the Brony fandom as well, or is it a combination of both?
It has pretty much affected my personal life. Talking to my friends when I stream my art, it helps me feel more at company. Instead of being alone, I have people to talk to and share my ideas with. It's really nice because it's a lot better than just not talking to anyone. it has helped me out that way.
I live alone myself, and this podcast has been a way for me to generate more friendship. So every time we get someone on, it's like a new friendship begins. The online space certainly helps a lot, especially for people like myself living in somewhat remote areas. It's a great way to stay connected.
It has. I don't think I would be where I am now without it.
Same here. Talk about your creative process. Feel free to talk about it in relation to examples such as Embrace the Night, Music and Math, and Chakra Garden. Over to you, Friendly.
Actually, a very simple process. When I do draw a character, I start off with circles for body and the head. I just pretty much connect it with lines. And the materials I use is also very simple. It's just a number 2 pencil with the first initial sketch. And then once it's all done, pretty much just while looking at a reference of the character, I find the colored pencil that is the closest to that. And then I just color it in, simple like that, until it's to the full hue of that color. And then I get the number 2 pencil again to just add the shading to it. And with the backgrounds, if I want plants, I just draw plants. There's really nothing to it. If you think about it, it's really simple.
Simplicity is to the eye of the beholder, of course. Looking at specifically Chakra Garden, the way you realize Tree Hugger in your style, I dare anyone not to feel relaxed when you look at that work. I double dare you. I triple dare you.
Very relaxing.
Absolutely. It seems like you're relaxed as you're doing it. Is that right?
Actually, with that particular picture, Chakra Garden, I was listening to the Bob Marley album Legend. It gave me the vibes to create this really nice atmosphere, also inspiring at the same time because Tree Hugger, she has the dreadlocks, and I thought that looked pretty cool and unique on a pony character, and it was just very unique, and so it made sense to play that along with the drawing of this. The softness you see in that sort of reflects the music I was listening to while I was drawing it.
Awesome. When you're doing other pieces, does music operate in a similar fashion as giving you that flow to draw?
Sometimes when I'm streaming, I put on my music. Usually when I'm like drawing my African animal characters, I would have my African music playing, and that's always good inspiration. Yeah, it just helps flow, as well as half the streams I'm talking to my friends, conversating with them about different subjects, things like that. And I draw while talking to them simultaneously. Talking to them helps me concentrate on the art because I know people are watching, and so they want to see an art get done. That's why I'm able to get it done in a fairly short amount of time.
And leading from that, now let's discuss some of your work. Since we've been talking about Chakra Garden already, let's talk about it some more. So how did that piece come about?
Well, it was directly after the episode she was in came out. Personally, I actually really liked her design, and her personality was really relatable in a way, very laid back, very relaxed. Sort of reminded me of my own mother somehow. You know how she always talked about vibes and things like that. My own mother would talk about vibes in this room or this place or whatever like that. She reminded me of her. Basically, I decided to draw her and make like a nice little garden around her while she meditates.
No wonder that's one of my favorite pieces.
It's one of my personal favorites as well. How it came out, how it's in the center of the paper. It just creates a nice little picture. And it really is actually a break from all the other ones where she's high or things like that. And she was never high in the original episode, so I decided to make a change with that and actually draw her doing something that she would be doing rather than acting high all the time from all the other arts you've seen.
So we've given Tree Hugger a lot of love. Now let's give some love to Music and Math. Now talk about this piece. It's sort of in the title, Music and Math. That's what it shows, but it just exudes childlike curiosity. Probably similar to the curiosity that led you to art in the first place. So talk about this piece.
Snowy Arc, he asked me to do this as a commission for him, and I thought it was a fun idea. And there's a lot of firsts in this image because I've never drawn phonograph before or all of those equations that you see on the right side of the picture. It was a lot of fun, especially drawing Lisa, the character in the center's expressions, how she's so happy that she fixed the phonograph and now it's playing music. The musical notes sort of lead you to the whiteboard that Snowy, the other character, is writing all those equations on. It goes in a big visual circle around Lisa's face in the center.
You know, the eye sort of starts from the record and moves into the loudspeaker, into the notes, into the whiteboard, and then the eye moving to the wrench, and then starting the whole sort of journey all over again. Now, there's sort of little notes in there, pardon the pun. The pie chart is actually with pizza, and who doesn't love pizza, right?
Man, I love pizza, especially extra cheese. That's why I put that in there.
Fantastic. With mathematics, there is a musical nature about it, how equations sort of develop, how they sort of come together and deconstruct. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, And you could say the same for music in general, because the rhythmic pattern, there's like a distance between each beat, each note, and that's all mathematically put together in a way. It's like interchangeable, if you could think of it that way in sort of a sense.
Absolutely. And the other thing is your color choices. You spoke about earlier how color blue acts as a great sort of contrast to the foreground. And you know what? That's happening here as well.
Like if you look at a cityscape or forest on top of mountains, and there's like a nice crisp blue sky behind it, it'll basically contrast all the colors of that cityscape or the forest or things like that. It'll make the colors and objects pop out more. And that's what it's doing in this image right here.
Most definitely. I like how you use the metaphor for landscape. But the way you've done the movement of the sky, of the air, this music and the equations, there's two ways I sort of see it. One, they're doing their operations on clouds down. We have seen with Starlight Glimmer that Unicorn can use magic to create the levitation effect. So it's entirely plausible that she would be there doing her math while Lisa's making music. And on the other hoof, the swirling effect almost looks like a vortex. I love science fiction. I love wormholes. So it may have this special dimensional space where they make magic, so to speak. And I guess for yourself, a lot of your work is well grounded in nature. Do you have interest in the opposite spectrum as well? From being down to earth, the opposite is in the clouds, in space, so to speak. So much space.
Sometimes I draw surreal art, but most often it's usually realistic African animal stuff. But I can make a floating piece of land with a tree in it, and I could have a pony on top of that.
Absolutely love surrealism myself. One of my favorite artists is Salvador Dali. Man, and he did it all.
I saw some books about a crazy artist, but he was great. He had a pet anteater as well.
Fancy that.
He walked it around on a leash in public.
And listeners, if you like floating trees, check out Islands Above in the gallery as well from Friendly Elephant, my birthday gift for the floating tree. When I look at it, the first thing that comes to mind is Unobtainium and James Cameron's Avatar, the floating Hallelujah Mountains of Pandora.
Looks similar to that, yeah.
And when we look at the pony here, is it OC? Does it have a name here for the commissioner?
I asked Tree if she had a name, and he told me that her name is just Tree Pone. He hasn't thought of a name as of yet.
Well, you know what? Pony next to a tree, tree pone.
Absolutely, makes sense.
Stuck and going up and who knows to good knows where. Seems to be quite at ease.
He has like this story to it where she was just walking along and then passing by this tree, land around it, and the land that she was standing on began lifting up out of the earth. Now she just floats around in the atmosphere about 10,000 feet up. I guess she's become used to being up there all the time, and the floating tree is still sort of developing the idea of it. I just think the whole thing's pretty cool.
And also, you have this flair with the backgrounds, let me tell you, with the strokes. You've actually given the illusion of air movement through the sky. You've found a way to sort of tie it into the presence of this, well, floating tree. So well done.
Oh, thank you. I actually used the curve of my wrist to achieve that look in the sky. And the way I made the clouds, I actually didn't put any color where the clouds are. That's the color of the paper where the clouds are.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to finish off this portion of the podcast, let's talk about Embrace the Night. This is another commission for Snowy Ark. In one way, it's obvious. Who doesn't love Luna? Goodness knows I do. Talk about the story behind this piece.
Snowy came back to me again for another commission, and he wanted me to draw his character Lisa being hugged by Luna. And it was a challenge for me because I haven't really ever drawn Luna before until this point. And also it's a bit more difficult for me to color characters that are of a darker shade, but I gave it a shot anyway. And it was actually more easier than I thought it would be. It was fun drawing the princess and Lisa's expression of her getting slightly strangled by her strong four-hoof hug. It came out better than I expected, really.
I have to mention, in regards to Luna, you absolutely nailed it. And we can definitely see how Lisa Castle reacts to Luna's aggressive hug. It's just nothing but love, and Lisa's just going with it. And I guess also talk about why you chose to sort of isolate them in this sort of bubble kind of thing. It's almost like you've isolated the moment between these two, as if they're perhaps even in a crowd of ponies, for some reason or another, it's just them. It's just these two beautiful ponies, a shield of the moment, so to speak. What do you think?
I decided to do the bubble-like thing with the blue sky in the background because they are perfectly in the center of the paper, and I wanted to try to keep it equally centered within the image itself to equal out. Actually, you could see that in most of my art. Sometimes it looks like this, that looks like an actual bubble, and sometimes the blue sky can be going off the edges of the paper. It fades into white in the center, and then it gets darker blue to the corners and the sides.
So like the night, eventually it fades away.
Exactly, yes. Also, with that style of the sky, like how you said, it sort of captures the moment in time of this particular thing going on. Could be whatever it is. It's basically that, just a moment in time that's encapsulated in this blue sky.
Just beautiful. And to bring us home, what is the future for the Friendly Elephant?
I hope to keep making artworks and maybe even make even better arts in the future. Maybe experiment with more landscapes and may add more characters. As well with the trips, I hope to go on more journeys throughout the world. I think my next area I'm planning on going to is Australia to see the kangaroos and the Red Center. Heard that's a pretty cool place.
Outstanding. I better meet up with you then.
Definitely, we could meet. We could hang out.
That's actually one of my dreams, is actually to see Australia. It's a big place and there's a lot to see as well. Friendship is magic, so you never know what's going to happen.
The journey is never over, always continuing on into the future.
And as the saying goes, it's the journey that counts, not the destination. However, there's so many destinations to see, so you know what? It's like Pokemon. Got to catch them all if you can.
Indeed.
So Friendly, where can the people find you?
Well, you could find me on DeviantArt, The Friendly Elephant at DeviantArt.com. Also, if you're interested in my Africa videos, there's always my YouTube channel, which is Pachyderm Pictures at YouTube.com.
You also mentioned that you stream as well. How can people get a piece of that action?
If you guys are interested in coming to my stream, I always post a link in my journal from Friday to Sunday. Those are the days I usually stream, and come over just to hang out, talk about random stuff, or just watch me draw. It'll be cool.
20% cooler, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you, Friendly, for being on I'm Brony and I'm Proud. It's been a pleasure to have you.
It's been a pleasure as well. It's been awesome.
Very welcome, and catch you later.
Catch you later.
Bye. This has been I'm Brony and I'm Proud. Lucky Knight speaking. Thanks for listening. Remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at IBAIPshow. Proud to be a Brony. Intro and outro by Black Griffin. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
My little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be.